Welcome back to the First Impact channel. This is David, and today we're going to be reviewing Dragon Ball Super episode 54. And guys, I'm excited because the show is finally heading to quite an interesting place. We begin the episode with Trunks' image training, which, as far as my recollection goes, I don't really remember seeing this in quite some time. It's been a while. And yeah, they are kind of playing out this whole Trunks in black thing, like to some extreme extent, to where it's almost kind of boring me at this point. But it's really cool that we have all these old little things coming back and forth, like I've been talking about on a lot of these episodes as of late. And I just find that to be a really cool homage to the previous series and such. So, of course, moving on from that, we start out again with another really weird My Kiss thing. And I just want to remind you guys that this is not sequential in any way, but I'm just pointing out things that were highlights to me in the episode. So the whole weird My Kiss thing happens again, but I think they handled it a lot better this time because they do something a lot more comedic with it, and it is just another part of one of the weekly peel-off gang ventures of silliness and ridiculousness. We also get to a point in the story where Dr. Brief is finally finishing one of the bottles of, as the aforementioned, time juice, as I like to so cleverly call it. That's kind of super short and really briefly expository, but we do know that it is complete, and he has also apparently created an apparatus, or maybe it's existed for a while, that looks exactly like the one that Future Bulma uses to encase the liquid. So we also have another moment, speaking of peel-off silliness, and Peel-off is apparently some sort of coding genius because he is doing, and maybe this is just speaking more to his expertise, which we've never seen Peel-off do this, by the way, but he's apparently a coder of sorts. And when I say coder, I mean in the sense of an IT coder. It's pretty strange that we see Peel-off working on part of the program that Bulma's using and quote-unquote improving it, even as far as I remember referring to himself as Peel-off-sama, and that's hilarious to me. But, and for all of you who don't know, Sama is usually a word or an honorific in Japanese that's generally reserved for speaking of a god or someone of a higher position in a sarcastic manner, I would say. I could be wrong. My fellow weebs could correct me on this. If I am wrong, please and thank you. Let me know in the comments. But yes, he is fixing the program, quote unquote. Bulma freaks out and walks over to him as he's typing away and basically kind of stops him and looks at it and is like, whoa, this is actually pretty good. And she's like, I wonder just who you are, kid. And I think the collective sound of a billion face palms across the world freaked out, because how does she not know who Peel-off is? For the billionth time I've said this, guys, and it's just absolutely stupid at this point. He's wearing the same freaking clothes for the most part. Well, they're a little different, yeah, but I believe his hat is still the same, and Maya and Shu are wearing the exact same clothes. I mean, come on, this just can't even be happening. But whatever, I guess my childish fanboyism is what it is. But let's move on to what Beerus and Whis are doing. So they have some exposition to give, and they're talking about the whole Zamasu's key and Black's key being similar yet again, but they're not identical. Now, Whis kind of further adds on to this by saying that Zamasu doesn't have an evil key, and apparently that's a thing now, or maybe I've just missed this before other than, booze, but he has an evil key, and it is not sensed in Zamasu, only in Black. So that's kind of an interesting little statement that they've kind of exposed for us a little bit, but I'm not entirely sure how to feel about that. I think that it's still pretty obvious that Zamasu is Black or Gowasu, but I'm going to go ahead and assume that it is most likely Zamasu still. And we're going to get into that a little bit later as to why I think that's still a thing. But just to continue on with Zamasu a little bit, Zamasu learns of the time ring, and he shows a little bit more of his evil tendencies by talking about kind of wanting to kill off this group of aliens that him and Gowasu have been kind of watching over a little bit. And these people are pretty barbaric. I believe their planet's name was something to that extent of barbaric something. I don't know. It's something silly, but it's kind of great just to see them kind of giving them something to talk about in regards to Gowasu and his relationship and what it is that Zamasu is really thinking. So we get a little bit of exposition on the Kaio earrings, and this is what I think is really interesting about this episode, is that, as we all know, the Potara earrings are a fusion-based power. They may have other issues and powers, but we don't know that yet. But he does talk about them, and Zamasu is actually well aware that they will fuse you, and he didn't necessarily realize that it was permanent, I believe. But, the Kaioshin Gowasu actually makes it very abundantly clear that they would become stronger and blah, 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 and even makes a funny joke, which I find to be really foreshadowing. He says that, we'd fuse and be bond together. Do you want to fuse with me? And it's pretty obvious that this is probably this arc at least is gonna touch on something to do with fusion, in my opinion. Now, I mean, I could be wrong, but there just seems to be way, way too many bits of foreshadowing that have been talking about it. And in regards to Gowasu, he had mentioned earlier in the episode that his tea tasted quite funny. And I'm starting to think that he may be poisoning Gowasu, possibly. Now, I talked to LSM Mike. If you guys don't watch his channel, go check it out. He's hilarious, @1, and he provides some really good information on Dragon Ball Super, Dragon Ball Z, and movies and different things like that. But him and I had a conversation on Twitter. His Twitter handle is @LSM Mike. We were talking about how I think that it may be poison. And he brought up a really, really good point that it is most likely not poison. He said it'd be cool, but he thinks that it's maybe more along the lines of something more metaphysical, which really made me think about it a little bit more. And I was like, you know what? You're probably right there, man. So I'm going to go ahead and give it to Mike on this one and say that it is probably something metaphysical, but I think that we both agree that there is definitely some tampering going on there. Now, Trunks and Vegeta have a moment, which is really great, and a really good character building moment for those two, although there's still some really strange sense of indifference or just some kind of weird gap between them. And I know that that's always been a thing, but it feels less natural now, I guess, currently, just with the state of affairs and what they had been through together beforehand. But they have a moment where they train together. This is a very exciting thing for me, at least, because I always loved that whole dynamic between them in the Cell Saga, and I thought that it made Vegeta more interesting and made future Trunks as a character more interesting. Kind of see him grow and get stronger and just kind of form somewhat of a bond with Vegeta, even if it's a pretty tattered bond. But Vegeta talks to him about training, and Trunks is like, just, don't hold back, go Super Saiyan 3. And then, of course, Vegeta's voice actor poignantly and greatly laughs and turns Super Saiyan Blue. Now, this is kind of a big deal. Trunks has never seen Blue or heard of it. And, he kind of starts catching on throughout the episode where Beerus and Whis have been talking about him and Goku fighting, and he's like, this is how, Son Goku is able to fight someone on this level. Him and my father can beat Black, and I'm not really needed. And, Vegeta almost kind of senses this in a way and just starts beating the crap out of him when he's, Super Saiyan Blue, as Trunks turns into Super Saiyan 2, which at one point he becomes Ultra Super Saiyan 2, if we can even still call it that. That's still what I call it. If you guys have a better name for it, please leave it down in the comments to let me know so I can kind of better improve that for you guys. But he does become Super Saiyan Ultra, and, this is a very large Super Saiyan transformation. But it seems that he's adapted it to Super Saiyan 2, which is kind of interesting, but Vegeta charges him, and as soon as he charges him, he assumes the old trope of him being way too big to move. So Trunks is able to somehow completely shrink down, which I don't think I've ever seen in the series before. But he shrinks down into his normal Super Saiyan 2 and dodges. And Vegeta's kind of surprised. And I think that this might be clever writing, because somebody in the writing department, in the animation department, was like, Trunks is the son of Vegeta, and Vegeta's a tactical genius. This is something that Vegeta would employ in a battle, or even in a situation like this to gain the upper hand. But this was a really cool scene. I really enjoyed it. They brought Goku and they brought Bulma into the mix, and I just thought that was a lot of fun to see them kind of interacting together and having this silly moment, but also this very serious moment. So, they had this whole training session, and they ended, and Vegeta's like, I'm not going to let you lose just because you're, all down on yourself, basically, and I'm paraphrasing here. But he's like, you carry the blood of a Saiyan warrior. I'm not going to let you lose to this, and Black should not be your only end goal. And then they end this whole thing with Trunks kind of surprising him when Vegeta powers down and headbutts him. And the whole premise of this whole training match was that if Trunks landed a hit, he would win the match. So this is kind of funny that it slips it in, but, Vegeta, of course, kind of dusts it off and turns around and gives his humph kind of noise and just walks away, and Trunks silently bows, which is really cool, and it kind of shows their bond developing a bit further. Now, Beerus and Whis, moving on from what we were just talking about, they are receiving a call at the end of this episode, which is really, really interesting. And it is from the Omni King, or Zeno, and he says in his adorably cute voice that he wants to meet Son Goku, and that ends the episode. And I may have mentioned this for you guys in a previous episode, but the voice actor, or the seiyuu for Zeno, is actually Pikachu's, which is kind of a fun little fact. And I'm sorry, but I just think Zeno's voice is just adorable. Call me a weeb and say whatever you have to, but it's freaking cute. So let's go over everything we talked about a little bit and kind of maybe add in some theories for next week. We don't have an episode this weekend, just to remind you guys and let you all know. I'm sure you all know, but just to throw it out there to you. But so some of my theories that I had said before, I believe that the tea is poisoned. There is something in the back of my mind that really makes me think that fusion is going to play a crucial role. Now, this is kind of silly and it's not really well thought out, but I think that that somebody at least is going to fuse with the Potara earrings, and I'm assuming that it is Zamasu. Who he's going to fuse with is definitely the question, I would say. I was thinking Gawasu for a little bit. I was even thinking of an alternate timeline version of Goku. I'm not entirely sure, so let me know what you guys think about this in the comments. And furthermore, there is something that is kind of boggling my mind ever so slightly. There's a bit of exposition in this episode, and I may not have covered it, but let me just cover it for you now. They talk about the time rings and explain this a little further, and apparently every time ring in the box that we see is developed from someone going back in time and altering it. And they made mention that a few years ago, quote unquote, a new ring was born. And Gawasu says that, what fool would do that? And I'm assuming that this is Trunks. But then again, it could be someone else. We don't know, but that seems like the obvious answer. And I think that's definitely a really cool plot twist, if that's kind of really where they go with this and they kind of expand on that and go with it. But I'm just ultimately hyped to see the Zeno King and see where this is leading. So let me know how you guys feel about these theories, how you feel about the episode in general. Leave me comments, leave me likes, let me know how you guys are doing with the community and how you feel about the show. And yeah, just give me some of your theories in the comments too, because I'm ever so curious. I'm just as hyped as you guys are, and I'm ready for the next episode. So until next time, please come on back to the First Impact channel.